Whenever people would be like, oh, just wait till they're teenagers, we'd have to tell them, we actually have 3 teenagers at home. And we absolutely loved our time with our teens. And we intentionally made our home the home that all the other teenagers wanted to be at. If I get a phone call from one of my kids, I know that it's because they couldn't reach Angie.
Whatever they were doing, I wanted to be their best cheerleader.
The way I raised my boys was a single lane road, almost trying to prevent them from making any mistakes.
Love never left, but there's almost a deeper love and understanding because of those heartaches. As a parent, I came to see them as God sees them because I realized that it could have stayed broken. And if that were the case, that really would have been the heartache.
Well, Kenny, Angie, why don't you tell everyone who you are?
We're Kenny and Angie Dibble. We're from Salt Lake City, Utah, but we've moved to Texas in the last couple of years and are living here. All of our children, however, are living in Utah and California right now. So we've been married for 33 years.
33 years, yeah.
Wow. Third of a century.
Yeah.
Okay.
33 years. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, 5 kids in total. As Angie mentioned, one of them in California and the rest in Utah. One set getting ready to head to the East Coast. But yeah. 5 kids. Married.
2 boys, 3 girls.
And what are the age ranges from oldest to youngest?
31 to 21.
5 kids in 10 years. So we did 4 kids in 6 years. So
okay,
very similar spacing there.
Yeah. From those 5 kids, we have 4 grandbabies, 3 from our oldest, and then oldest son, and then a daughter that gave birth about
8 months ago.
8 months ago.
And as you look back on your parenting journey, what would you say your greatest strengths were as parents? What are you proud of?
Well, mine's easy. My greatest strength was I married Angie.
Okay. No cop-out answers here. No, I won't accept it.
Hold them to that.
Obviously, she's amazing, but come on.
Yeah.
My greatest strength, I feel like I've been able to connect and have a relationship with each one of my children. That's very personal and special to each one of them. And so I feel like, I don't know, that was probably something I did okay at.
Yeah. Was that intentional?
Yes.
Give me an example of something intentional you did to foster that.
Well, I mean, I think it started at the very beginning after having our first, and I think most mothers can relate to this. I loved that baby so much that it was actually really hard for me to think about having more children because I thought there's no way I'm ever going to be able to love another baby the way that I loved this baby. And so I struggled with that, like for a little bit of time. And when it came time to talking about having another baby, I just kept telling my husband, it won't be fair. But then of course you have another baby and you love that baby, and then you have more babies. And it was a great lesson for me because I realized that I could love each one of those babies as much as I loved that first one. And so I think because that happened at the very beginning throughout the course of the years of being a mother, I intentionally gave all that I could to each one of my children. Whatever they were doing, I wanted to be their best cheerleader. So whatever sports they were in or whatever activity they were in, I was going to support them 100%. I was going to be at every game, every performance. I was going to go above and beyond being their cheerleader. And some of our children didn't love me growing up, but I still stayed there. Like I still stayed involved. I still did everything I could for those children. And because of that, some of those children, it was mostly just a daughter that didn't love me during high school. And she'll laugh because she knows who she is.
She loved you, but didn't like you very much.
Yes.
I've got a daughter like that. I won't say which one.
Yeah. But we have a wonderful relationship now and we are very close. But I didn't ever give up. Like I didn't let those feelings get in the way. It is very intentional. And I tried to see each one of them as an individual and not try to make them all the same. Like I didn't expect the same from all of them, but I tried, and I really tried to help them see that each one of them mattered because of who they were individually.
irrespective of anything or anyone else.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, Angie's kind of selling herself short because this is really her superpower. I was reading earlier, there's a quote by Mother Teresa that I won't get it exactly, but she basically said, love begins at home, and it's not how much we do, but how much love we put in to what we're doing. And Angie does that just amazing. We're late joining your podcast because Angie was fielding one of 5 or 6 FaceTime phone calls that she'll take today alone from our adult kids. And this daughter was on the phone with her, and I was just kind of listening from another room. And just hearing the conversation that they have together is absolutely incredible to me. And it's just the proof now of all of that work that Angie put into each of our kids individually, which is hard to do, right? Because you're a family, you're a unit, and you do everything together. And to make them, or to get them to feel like they're not only loved collectively, that we are one family, but that they're loved individually is, I think that's a huge thing. And I would maybe lump that in as one of my strengths, maybe us together, that I could see that that was happening even at an early age, and I tried to foster that at every turn.
Just trying to emulate what Angie was doing.
Yeah, that, and to foster that ability to allow that to happen, to put ourselves in situations where Angie could do that. And a lot of that happened by accident. I mean, I ended up, of course, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and obviously we'll be talking about that here, and what the gospel means, and what those principles teach us early on. But I ended up at an early age in our marriage busy with church callings, started my church profession, if you will, young. And so Angie spent a lot of time with the kids alone. And so a lot of this happened because it had to, but she was just so naturally good at it. And I felt like I could tell from an early age in our marriage that this thing that was happening, that I was watching happen, would pay dividends later. It really did. And it has, and it continues to today. As a bishop, I learned that you're going to watch the members of your ward, and I would say members of my family, make decisions that you would rather them not make, contrary to what you might think or know is best for them. But you have to let them bloody their nose along the way. And that's okay as long as they know where to come home to when they're done.
Mm-hmm.
When that journey of difficulty ends, when that journey of uncertainty ends, if they know that they have a place, if they know that they have love and something to come home to, then you did something right. And now looking back at it globally, right, from a 30,000 foot level, I can see that those early moments in our marriage are paying dividends today because that happened. Each of our kids have bloodied their nose along their journey. And because of that Mother Teresa quote, right, because it was how much love was put in at the time, that's paying dividends today.
Yeah. It's almost like the quality of the love, not necessarily the quantity.
Yeah.
If I'm spending all day with my kids and I'm just scrolling on my phone, that's not very high quality love, right? But if I get 30 minutes with them one-on-one, like diving deep on something that they love, that they're invested in, and I'm becoming invested in it too, that's worth a whole day's worth of love. Did you ever struggle with, like, I don't know how else to put this, but FOMO, when you saw how much time Angie was able to spend with the kids and you were like,
It's almost comical now. If I get a phone call from one of my kids, I know that it's because they couldn't reach Angie.
Yeah.
And our son from California called the other day, and I was like, Brandon, how are you? And his first comment was, why is mom not answering her phone? And that is the sum total of most conversations that I have with my kids is, why is mom not answering her phone? And so there's maybe a little bit of FOMO there that maybe I wish that I had it, but no, in the long run, I love that she has that. I love that they love her. I can sometimes, just like I was when I walked in prior, as we were preparing to meet with you and listening to her have this conversation with my daughter, it thrills me.
Yeah. What would you say, looking back, your greatest weaknesses were as parents?
I was too strict, too rigid. A lot of the way that I parented early on came from we became parents at a very young age. Our first baby came 9.5 months after we were married. And so instead of having time to figure out what kind of parents we wanted to be or even how to do this, we were babies having babies.
How old were you?
21. We were both 21. And when that baby came, we were 22. But the early years, and even I say the middle years of having our children, a lot of the way I raised my kids was a default of like the way that I had been raised. The times were very different back then, also like the way that you raise kids and discipline kids and things. And there was a lot of expectations and some rigid rules, kind of like in our church and in society altogether. And so my greatest weakness, I feel like, is that I put too much emphasis on raising our kids with those rules and those expectations.
It's all you knew.
It's all I knew. And as we kind of were parents longer and we grew and watched and we had some bloody noses along the way, I began to understand that it didn't matter. Like those things didn't matter. And, regret comes into that, as a parent, like you look back and regret came into that and wanting to be better and do better, throughout the course of parenting. A lot of it changed because society changed and even things within our church. A lot of the rules that were there are now gone. My weakness was, I think, that I put too much emphasis into that and it influenced the way that I disciplined. And I wish that I knew then what I know now.
Is there a particular story that stands out that just makes you cringe at yourself?
I don't know necessarily one, but just, I think, I don't know. I mean, especially with our boys, obviously, because by the time our girls came along, even things were changing by then. Our boys came first.
Which they will remind us of constantly, right? Your older kids were like, wow, I can't believe you're letting her do this. That was never allowed when we were kids.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily have one, but it's just the overall being. I was a yeller at the beginning of being a mother. That's what I came from. It's what I knew. And I hate that. I don't like yelling. And it makes me sick, honestly, to think about the fact that I did that. Yeah, I mean, it's more just not necessarily one thing, but just how we parented back then. Or disciplined, I would say, specifically, is just how we disciplined then. Yeah, so I can't think of like one story, but just kind of makes me honestly sick to my stomach sometimes that I treated my kids the way that, and not that I was abusive. I wasn't abusive, but spanking was a thing back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And 90s. And I don't know. It's just something I would do differently now.
Yeah.
I think that we're complicit in this. Again, we were babies raising babies. And as our kids have become adults, I think they've cut us a little slack because now a few of them have kids, right? We have 4 grandbabies. And so they're starting to realize that, it's hard, that there aren't answers. The joke is, kids don't come with instruction manuals and parenting doesn't either. And so everybody's learning at the same time. And this on-the-job training is like a perfect chemistry project that could go really well or could just explode in your face.
Yeah.
And we had 5 kids every 2 years. And so we had lots of young kids simultaneously. And so things can get away from, and you feel like the only option is to keep them as pinned in as possible. And sometimes that's where, like Angie's saying, is the strictness. I think an analogy that I raised my boys in particular. If it were a road, this journey of life, the way I raised my boys was a single lane road, no two lanes. You can only go one direction, right? A single lane, and the barriers on that road were just pinned in on either side, and they could have a little wiggle room. They could move a little bit, and they could even make a mistake and bump into one side or the other, almost like bumpers at a bowling lane. But it didn't allow them to even make a mistake on their own that they could later learn from. I mean, we were almost trying to prevent them from making any mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I was way too concerned about hair. Like for whatever reason, it's like I did not let my boys have long hair. If they wanted to grow their hair out, I thought they're leaving the church. It's all over. Everything we've done is for naught because they want to grow their hair out.
I need to repent.
Or I remember I took one of my sons to a baseball game. I love baseball. Went to a baseball game and I said, all right, we were at Yankee Stadium. And I said, all right, Taylor. Oh, dang it. Well, now you know who you are, Taylor. But no, he's fine with this. But he wanted this hat. This was the brand new hats came out with the flat brim. And it was like the only place I'd ever seen any of those hats were in like a rap video or something, some crazy music video that I would not have appreciated him listening to, which he probably did. And so of all the hats on this huge, glorious wall at Yankee Stadium, he picks this one with this flat brim.
The only one you didn't want.
Yeah. If there were 142 hats, he picked the one that I was like, please don't pick that hat. Please don't pick that. And he picked that hat. And I remember being so mad. He picked that hat because it's the one he knew I didn't want him to pick. And that wasn't it at all. Instead of that one lane highway, I wish it would have been 2 lanes with the guardrail far enough apart that they could go either direction and make a mistake and run into it, bloody their nose along the way, and then be better for it.
Yeah.
I think as parents, because we were so young, we just didn't want any of that to happen. It's almost like I felt as a father, if I give them an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah.
If I let Taylor wear this hat, then he's going to get into rap videos and all hope is lost. And that's not it at all. It wasn't it at all. And so I've often reflected on that silly experience and just wondered, wow, you could have done things much different.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of an argument I got in with just one of my sons about getting a haircut. They were all getting haircuts and he didn't want a haircut. I'm like, you need to get a haircut. And it's like, why does he need a haircut? Honestly, I can't even tell him a good reason.
Yeah.
Like we just pick the wrong battle sometimes, right?
No, I think that's right.
And that we use up that capital when it's needed on bigger battles, right? We exhaust it too early.
Yeah.
When it's really needed.
For sure.
I meant to ask this question when you were talking about, Angie, all the time you spent with your kids and all the love you gave them. Kenny, did you ever feel like that was competing with you, with your relationship? Like, I love that you're spending all this time with our kids, but we need to spend time together too. Was that ever at odds?
She's shaking her head. I can see through the corner of my eye, but I would have said no, except in the moment where I was like, I felt like I had to reintroduce myself to my wife, but a lot of that was because I was also gone a lot. I mean,
That's probably why I shook my head.
I had started, early in our life, I got in over my head in my profession and really busy there, and then really busy with church. And she was really busy with family. And it's like, we're busy doing all of these things. I think I could say now that we're talking about it, one of our greatest weaknesses was that exact thing. We just didn't spend time together.
Intentionally, like we didn't intentionally make time for each other. If it happened, we were like, oh, this is awesome. We get to spend time together. But
in the thought of it, was I ever worried that it was taking time from me even parenting? No, I was so grateful for it.
Yeah.
I was so grateful that she had, like I refer to it as her superpower, that this was something that I knew from that early age was going to be a huge blessing for us in the long run.
Well, and clearly it seems like you guys are very close now, right? Like even though you put all that energy into your kids while they were in the home with you, it doesn't appear, at least from the surface, that it negatively impacted your relationship after the kids left, right?
Right.
Right. Well, and we did the important things along the way, even though we were both busy with their things. I knew that he was doing all that he could do, and he knew I was doing all that I could do. And so there was still, that love and support and respect for each other. And as our kids began to get older, we did better at taking more time to be together. And so, and parenting, it doesn't ever end, but your kids do leave eventually. And we're newly empty nesters. And so it's been kind of fun. Like, we've both been excited for this time, that I think because we had babies so quickly that we feel like we get to kind of start over dating and being together and being that. And so I feel like because we did what we needed to do to keep our relationship what it needed to be during all those years, we did that so that now we can enjoy being together and kind of dating all over again and having that aspect of our relationship back.
Yeah. But if the price for what we are enjoying now with our adult children and the relationship they have with both of us, but particularly Angie, if that was the price, I'd do it 100 times more.
Yeah. What were some righteous traditions you had in your household? What were you good at, and what could you have done better at with regards to the little things, reading your scriptures, saying your prayers, etc.?
We did all that. We did scripture study. Scripture study and prayers were hard. We weren't the family that got up at 6 a.m. every time, but we did it always before school. We always had some sort of scripture study or prayer before school. And we always had family home evening. Back then, family home evening was a very prominent part of the LDS church. And so Monday nights were sacred. And so we did the lessons and we did the activities and we did all those things. And then when our kids got to the age, we have temples in our church, and we would take our kids to the temple and we prepared them for missions. And so, we did all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as traditions go, they joke now, even we try to do a monthly phone call. We're in Texas, we've got them in California and Utah. And I still start this monthly phone call with "Welcome to Family Home Evening," and all the kids start laughing. And they can laugh now, but at the time when they were doing it, it was not funny because it meant we've got Family Home Evening again. But no, traditionally we had some, and I'm glad you phrased it that way, Chris. I appreciate that, righteous traditions, because certainly that was an intentional goal that we had.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could have done differently in that regard? Are you happy with everything?
We were pretty rigid about Family Home Evening. Because of that, we didn't allow some of our children to have activities on Monday night, which kind of impacted them personally. And so I wish that we wouldn't have been as rigid, that maybe we would have taken the spirit of Family Home Evening and maybe used it in a different day or a different way and allowed those children to participate in those things, because I think some of that brought later resentment for some of our children. But we were trying to be obedient to what was being asked. And so some of that, but one of my favorite things that we did as a family is we often went uptown. We were living in Utah, just south of Salt Lake City. And one of our very favorite pizza places is up near the Salt Lake Temple. So we would often go get pizza and walk around the temple and talk about the temple and the importance of the temple. And so we were intentional that way. We were intentional of trying to teach our children that we were who we were as a family because of the gospel of Jesus Christ, because of the teachings of love and forgiveness, and that we believe families are forever. And because of that, work and effort needs to go into it, and righteous traditions, right? Things that you intentionally do. And so I feel like we did that.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. That's a long-standing question on this podcast is, do you regret being too strict or not strict enough? And I think just about everyone has regretted being too strict. There might be a selection bias in there. If people that are trying to live according to a higher standard, which is really the only people I interview, they're more likely to lean towards being too strict, myself included. And I just find that fascinating. I don't even know what to take from that, but there's not like a one size fits all. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. I'll just be less strict. It was like, no, it's like what age, what gender, what's the personality type? Like, it's just, you just can't give blanket advice. It's so personalized, right?
For sure. Well, and I look at our kids today, even though each of them have had their hardships, whether it's due in some parts the way they were raised by their terrible parents, they are amazing humans. They are just exceptional people. And so, if even though it was not perfect or should have even been done differently, to your point, Chris, it's like, what if they are today the way they are today because I was too strict
Yeah.
at a certain point? And I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that, because then you could cookie cutter it. We could box this up and sell it and make $1 billion. But but you can't, because
Right.
at every age it's different. By their experiences it's different, and every one of them come prepackaged differently. And so if we were to look at our kids and say, hey, we created great members of the community and great people, then maybe I wouldn't have done it differently. But it felt like, in general, as you pointed out, we were, probably a little too strict.
If you guys were to be able to, play through your whole lives all over again and make a conscious decision to be less strict, you could end up with something that looks much worse than what you have today.
Yeah, totally
right?
different.
Or much different for sure. You just don't know. We don't know how it would have gone if we were less strict. It's easy to have regrets, but we don't know. We're just trying to make it.
Yeah.
Right.
When you think back on your parenting journey, what were the moments that brought you guys the most joy as parents?
So, like my husband mentioned, he was gone a lot for about 20 years. I wanted to make sure that our children didn't feel that void. I didn't want them to resent him being gone all the time. And so as my kids began to be, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, my oldest children, Tuesday nights, my husband was always gone every Tuesday night. And so I began folding clothes on Tuesday nights. And then I would have my older kids kind of stay up and hang out with me. And I would fold clothes and the TV would be on in my room and we would talk and hang out. And as time went on, those kids started to drive. And so they would go and pick up Taco Bell. Usually it was Taco Bell. And after they had lacrosse practice or their performance practices, they would come back home and we would hang out in mom's room on Tuesday night and fold clothes and talk. That happened for years.
Yeah, like 15 years. It's no small time.
That brought so much joy to me because it was those small moments, like where my kids felt like they could talk to me about anything. And it was times that they opened up about things, or we would discuss what was happening in their life or what they needed. And it wasn't like it was forceful. It was intentional, but it wasn't forceful. It was just creating an opportunity or an environment where they felt safe, that they could talk. And we got so that we looked forward to Tuesday nights. In all honesty, we didn't want his schedule to change. Like, we were like, Dad has to stay gone on Tuesday nights.
On a rare Tuesday, I'd come home. They were like, you are totally throwing off our schedule. And why are you here? What's happening?
And it wasn't that I didn't want to share it with him, but it became very sacred,
right?
Special to me. And it brought so much joy to have that time with my children and to see them grow and to watch our relationship grow. So as I think, because I've had a few minutes to think about that, that was one thing that brought so much joy. And I think for me, the joy came from those relationships and the relationships that I still have with my children, intentionally making those relationships. Like another example is years later, in between our oldest son coming home from his mission and our second son leaving on his mission, it turned out we had 24 hours between them coming home and one leaving. And for those that don't know, in our church, you serve missions for 2 years as a young man. And so this oldest son had been gone for 2 years and his brother was leaving for 2 years. So it was going to be like 4 years that they wouldn't have seen each other. So
We had 24 hours. And at the time, my husband was serving in a stake presidency position that gave him certain authorization to do things. And so our oldest son came home and we picked him up from the airport and we went to a hotel in Park City. We didn't even go home because we didn't want to be bothered by anybody. We had 24 hours. It was going to be our time. My husband was able to release our oldest son from his mission. And we spent that night talking in the hotel till like 5 in the morning. And he was exhausted. He'd come home from Russia, so he was exhausted. And that next day, we spent the day as a family. We ate breakfast and lunch and dinner together. We took pictures. We laughed. We spent the whole day together. And then that next morning, my husband set apart our second son and he left. And that day has been and probably will always be one of the greatest days of my life because it was the last time our family was together as our little nucleus. And families grow and it's wonderful. And I love where our family's at today. But that was the last time our little family was the family that we had created. And it was probably one of the most joyful days of my life because I had all of my kids there. We were together as a family and we were intentionally doing things to be together. And I'm so grateful that we did intentional things because those intentional things brought so much joy to my life. So
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, more of that. And we did intentionally do things to create more of those one-on-one relationships. For each of our kids' 16th birthday, they could pick one place to go in the United States, and we would take just them. And interestingly enough, they all just eventually decided that New York City was that trip. And so we did some fun trips like that. But if I were to answer today what parenting moment brought me the most joy, it's actually today. And what brings me the most joy, no question, is seeing our adult children together. Watching the relationship of your adult kids is incredible. And it's an absolute joy. It's the thrill of my life to hear that one of our daughters has invited one of our other daughters and her husband over for dinner, or that my son and his wife have scooped up their youngest sister and brought her into their home to do something, or they get together when we go on family. Rarely now, if we ever get to go on a family trip together with everyone, watching them together is far and away my greatest joy, for sure. And I know that not everybody gets that because, like you mentioned, these kids are individuals. They're all different people, and there are families that siblings may grow up and not be close and never see each other and not want to talk to each other. And so I realize that this is a rare, special thing that we've been blessed with, that we have. And so that's something that I am just so grateful to God to have in our home. It's not in our home, but in our family, is this amazing experience of watching your adult kids want to be together and love each other.
Yeah. I grew up in a family that isn't like that. We're not close. And it saddens me, but a big purpose for this podcast is to learn some things where this family that I have today can be that, that we can work towards that. And that sounds just as incredible as you described, both of those scenarios. Thank you for sharing that. Can you think of any like pivotal moments in your parenting journey, like big decisions that you made? I understand that you lived in Utah basically the whole time you raised your kids and you didn't move until after, but was there like a conscious decision to change how you approach something, or can you think back to anything like that seemed to make a difference?
I think for sure, yeah.
I'd have to say, so prior to living in Utah, we were in Ohio for 4 years while my husband went to dental school. While we were in school, we weren't sure where we were going to go live. Utah was on the map, but we had a lot of options we were looking at. While we were there, we lost my dad suddenly. He was very, very young. And so because of that, we felt the need that we needed to go to Utah to raise our family. And so that pivoted our direction going to Utah. And it also changed kind of our game plan for our family.
having lost my dad so young, we decided that we were going to do everything for the here and now with our kids. Like we weren't going to wait until this happened or till we had this or this to do things, and that we were going to seize every opportunity and make the most of everything and build memories and have experiences, because all of a sudden life felt very short, if you will.
For sure.
And so I feel like that changed, at least for me, my entire game plan of how I was going to raise my kids and what I was going to do. And honestly, that nothing else in the world mattered except for those individuals and my husband and our family. Like everything else will come and go. And so, at least for me, that was a very pivotal moment because it changed my whole parenting and my whole aspect of life, honestly.
I think one of my favorite stories of this whole conversation has been the laundry story. 15 years folding laundry. You know, we've taken our kids on big vacations. We saw all 50 states. We've been to Europe. But like when I think of my most joyful moments, it's stuff like that. You know, just last night, I spent 2 hours walking around in the woods with my son, you know, just talking. And it's, you know, in the RV, like we had this RV, we traveled all over, but my greatest memories were just driving late at night with my kids, hanging out, talking to me. You know, you don't need money for these awesome experiences. Then I hope that's heartening for people to hear.
Well,
it's just the
we
sweetest.
kind of feel the same way. We've been able to travel a lot with our kids.
Partially because of this decision.
Yeah.
My financial planners don't appreciate it because I have zero retirement. but that's because of, you know, we just decided as young parents, you know what? We have to do this.
Yeah, now.
Because and part of that was because she was raised, I mean, her family got out and did things, and had her dad waited till he retired, he would have been 20 years short of that. And that would have never happened. And so, yeah, it's those things that make a huge difference.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, just to your point, like we've done some of those big things, but some of our kids' favorite things, to your point, has been the small things. It's been folding the laundry or doing one-on-one things or small things with your kids. It doesn't have to be, you know, these grand things. Road trips. You know, some of our road trips we have fun memories of. And so, yeah, to your point, it's just the intent in making memories, right? Being intentional about taking time to be with your kids and do things with them. I'm grateful we didn't raise our kids during iPhones, during cell phones. I'm so grateful for that because we had to be present all the time. And I'm so grateful for that because I didn't have that distraction. Like I didn't have that influence of something just like wanting to distract me from being a mother. And so I was able to take that time to do those things.
It's funny, we talk about phones and kids, about how damaging it is, but we don't talk about from the parents' perspective, like parents being on phones around their kids.
Yeah.
I struggle with that. It's something I'm always fighting. And I wish I didn't have it. You know, I wish I didn't have a phone. Is there any specific advice you would give to parents, either parents of young kids, toddlers, or teenagers, or anything in between?
Having small children and toddlers is easy because our kids are in that phase right now, right? So what I try to tell my kids that are having young kids is to enjoy it, because it's a period of time where you're the most exhausted and you're the most overwhelmed and maybe sometimes the most discouraged because everything is starting out all at once. But it's such a short period of time. It comes to an end so quickly. And so like I tell my kids, like play with your kids, like enjoy each phase, like try not to wish it away because it's going to go. Like it's not always going to be there. And take time to be with them. Get on the floor and play with them and enjoy them. Let them get dirty, right? Let them get dirty. Let them make a mess. Let them do things and just enjoy it because it goes so fast. And, you know, and as a mother, you know, when you've had your fourth child and you think this is never going to end, and 18 years seems
forever away, that 18 years goes in a blink of an eye.
And then all of a sudden, the house is quiet.
And there's no mess. There's no noise. And it's hard. It's hard to not have that. And I think that's why being a grandparent brings so much joy, is because you know what you've lost, right? And so when you hear it and you have it, you enjoy it so much more because you know that it's not going to last forever. So that's what I would say to young parents. And, do you have anything you'd add to young parents?
Well, I think Angie would also say this, and maybe I'll let you talk about it, but we love the part about parenting that every age comes a new chapter, different experiences, challenges. And when you've got 5 kids at home and you have multiple children, they're going through all of those different chapters simultaneously. And so I think that part of the difficulty is just being able to recognize the kids individually. So I think we come full circle back to what Angie talked about at the very beginning. And this is something that's not easy. And so for parents, I would say get on your knees and pray and petition and plead with your Heavenly Father to give you insight and patience and perspective, because I think that's how we got to where we are today, certainly. I mean, one of the phases we always heard about as young parents was the dreaded teenage phase. And Angie will talk about this. I've heard her tell young parents this a lot, actually. And we loved having teenagers.
Loved it.
We absolutely, it was like a highlight for us. So whenever people would be like, "Oh, just wait till they're teenagers," and we'd have to tell them, "We actually have 3 teenagers at home," and I just had to keep my mouth shut because I didn't want to make that person feel bad, because we absolutely loved our time with our teens. And we intentionally made our home. We were greedy about it sometimes, but we made our home the home that all the other teenagers wanted to be at. So when our kids were with their friends, they were oftentimes within the walls of our home. And so we got to know their friends and watch the experiences that they were having. But teenage years obviously are going to have their difficulties for sure. Paramount difficulties at times, and things that you feel like you're never going to survive. But the joy we had for teenage years far outweighed the scary part, for sure.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
How did you make your home the cool home?
We had food. You just have to have food. We had an open door policy.
I don't need a pool then?
No.
We didn't.
I need.
We didn't
All right, Jess, I'm going to tell Jesse.
Our kids wish that we would have, but we had a big screen TV, which
like a movie theater
type thing. But we had food and we thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that was part of it. Is I hope that our kids and our kids' friends felt it, but I loved our kids' friends as my own and wanted to know about their lives and try to cultivate relationships with them. And
that takes time too.
Yeah, but it was so fun. And we just kind of let them be them. And we wanted them to know that they had a safe place to go to. For some of our kids, they had friends that didn't have homes where they wanted to be. And so we tried to make sure that our home was always a safe place for anyone that came. And that's what was hard, is when your kids graduate and leave, what you don't realize and you don't think about, because all of that goes with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not only are your kids growing up and leaving, but all of those friendships and all of that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was really hard too, is because we just had so much fun. For example, one time one of our children, his friends were over literally almost every night during high school, but for sure on the weekends, every weekend it was at our house. And one night they decided to play tag inside our house, and they turned off all the lights. We had a multi-level house, so they turned off all the lights throughout the house. And I was trying to get from the front door to the back door for something, and one of his friends came up the stairs to play tag and just like charged through the door and like tackled me down to the ground.
You over.
And someone else was right there, and they were like, "Turn on the lights! You think that Mrs. Dibble, that Angie just got attacked.
We killed her.
And it was so fun. I mean, the whole house erupted in laughter. And I was fine, and it was funny, and we still laugh about it to this day. My son will be like, Mom, do you remember when you got tackled in the house? And it was just so fun. And so I would say, don't be afraid of teenagers, I guess would be like, don't be afraid of those years. And I know that there's a lot of bad that can happen, but there's also so much good that happens during that time. And kids they're just trying to figure out who they are. And they need cheerleaders. Teenagers need cheerleaders. I mean, I think we all do at an age, but especially teenagers. I mean, teenagers that part of life can be so hard. I mean, we had that for our older kids, but then, for our youngest two daughters had the opposite. They had friends that betrayed them and hurt them. And so we had to deal with a different type of teenage years with them. Like there was lots of heartache and
loneliness
and
quiet times.
And there was just like so much that happened. And so, that brought with it a different type of teenage experience that we still enjoyed, but it was different,
And you have to address differently.
Yeah.
And this has come up a couple times during this conversation, but every single one of them are so different, and each phase of life is so different. But to Angie's point, the teenage years are so formable and important culturally. I think, we wouldn't want parents to be afraid of that time period, to embrace it and love it, not just because they leave soon, but because they need you as a parent to be there. I mean, home has to be a safe place to fail. When I say that, it sounds really good, but oftentimes I didn't want to give my kids a chance to fail, right? That one lane road analogy that I gave. But if I could have done it different, I would have created more of a safe place for them to fail, to watch them thrive when they work through that failure.
Yeah. But one thing I think that we did do okay at, or that we enjoyed doing, I should say, was whatever thing each of our teenagers was doing, like whatever activity or sport that they were involved in, we went full gear, like supporting, attending games. In fact, our youngest child, we kind of have this running joke that she was a car seat baby, right? Because we were just always going. By the time she came, we were always gone. Game or a performance or doing something. And so
people ask our youngest daughter, where were you raised? If she were to answer truthfully, she would say in a suburban. Not what city were you raised in, but
with McDonald's,
her sum total of life was in a suburban for sure.
But I mean, that's just like Kenny said, like teenagers, they need to know that they have someone. And so that's one thing we really tried to do is we made each of their things important, and not just to Kenny and I, but to our family.
Yeah.
So it was a family thing. We were going to go and support as best we could each one of them and whatever they do. And I would say that even as the older ones grew older and moved out of the house, they were good to always come back and support the younger ones. And even now, we have a daughter that's a college lacrosse coach for women. Our kids go to her games, and she's not even playing in them, but she's coaching. And because she's doing something, they're supporting her. And so I feel like we maybe kind of taught that importance of just being there. So I'd say that's what I would say for teenagers, is just be there.
I feel like so much of life is self-fulfilling prophecy and confirmation bias, that if we proactively expect those terrible teenage years, then we're going to find that. If we expect the terrible twos or all these stages, like we're going to look for it and we're going to find it. Yeah. And it might be pretty miserable. But if we go into it optimistically and looking for the good, then we might, it might turn what otherwise might be a bad situation into good or positive or memorable. You said, let your kids fail in the home. What about, I have a child that's very smart, but they don't apply themselves at school. Like they're objectively very, very gifted and smart, but their grades are bad. They just don't do it. My wife and I are both on them about it. Come on, turn this in. Did you turn this in? Did you turn this in? Why do you have a 70 in this? And like, we know what they're capable of, and it's this constant friction. Do we literally let them fail in their grades and potentially not go to a good college? You know, like, where do you draw that line?
That's so funny that you would ask that, because we have a child, very gifted, so gifted, and did that very thing in school. And it was hard for this child because they didn't want to be the smart one. They didn't want to be that person. And it was so frustrating as parents
To watch.
And good or bad, they were grounded all the time in high school, because it would be, you're failing this class, but you're a genius. Like, and so there was a lot of tug of war back and forth with that. I don't know. It was hard.
It's
I
difficult.
don't know what we did right or wrong.
It's difficult because you want to have that place where they can fail, but that doesn't mean that you step back and just let them, kill themselves in the process. It's
our friend Carl Fales has a quote, and he says, "High expectations, high love."
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
And
that's
I never
beautiful.
forgot that.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And that's how you can allow them to have these failures and they know where to come back to. But to answer your question, it's hard to just sit back and watch them fail, right? Because even though we may project this family where we were allowing this failure to happen, remember our first question we answered from you was we were way too strict. So even while this was happening, we were strict. You've got to get things done. You've got to do your homework. And I mean, it led to innumerable number of fights and groundings and everything else. So certainly, certainly you can't just turn a blind eye to it and just let them be totally on their own. But certainly there's a lesson that has to be learned there from both the parents and the child. And that, I think that's where the difficulty lies.
I will say that this child now, I mean, he kind of dealt with that even in college a little bit, but this person has become an incredible adult and
professional
and did it kind of their way.
Even as an adult.
That was what I was about to ask you. It was like, what happened? How did they turn out? What's the after? I saw the before.
Well, I mean, as an adult, kind of that. But as an adult, you don't have the rights anymore, right? To be so strict because they're adults. And so we just kind of had to watch. And to their own admission, they wish that they would have done it differently, that they would have not pushed back so hard, that they would have just seen that we were trying to do what was best for them. And it would have made, I think this person would have ended up at the same point, but it would have been much faster. I mean, to your point, education was very important in our family. Getting an education and doing well in school was very important. We had high expectations, right, for our kids. And I would say, and not this child, but all of our children have done very well on that. Some of them pushed back, some of them didn't, but they have all become, like Kenny said, amazing human beings. And they have great professions now, and they're great individuals, and they've figured it out. And so,
so to answer your question, Chris, everything ends up okay. So I think you're going to be all right. It can be painful in the process, like Angie said, especially when they're adults, because then you can't ground them, and you literally do then just have to sit back and watch.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe this is a question you were going to ask us later, but I think the best advice we've received of having adult children is just be quiet, just listen and love. And be there for them, because you might give them your opinion, but they certainly don't need it.
I think he goes to bed angry because we argue about his Spanish grade. And I'm like, is this really worth it? Like, is the Spanish grade worth causing a rift for this 12-hour period? And on the other hand, I'm like, I'm just trying to be invested in his life. Like, I just want him to not take the hard route.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do we really learn if we take the easy route?
Yeah.
Like we kind of have to take the hard route to truly learn. And I'm kind of an interesting case study of being raised in a household where the parents didn't know or care about my grades. Like I had full autonomy in high school, right? And my parents had no idea what classes I took, much less what my grades were. And my grades weren't great. And I remember I failed algebra one semester and then I retook it and I got an A. And because of that, my GPA was okay. And so I had to go to community college first. And then I went to, it all worked out. I wasn't arguing with my parents about it because they didn't care. But had I been doing that, then maybe we wouldn't have as good of a relationship today.
Right.
Like it just, with your help, I'm kind of answering this question as I talk through it right now. But high expectations, high love. Like I feel like they need to know what you think they're capable of and what the expectation is. But like beating them up about it every day, not literally, but verbally or whatever, I just don't think is helpful.
Yeah.
No,
it's hard.
Well, in a lot of the way that we raised our kids, we would say, this is what Dibbles do. Like we're asking you to do this because this is what Dibbles do. Like when we would make them stay after to clean up something that wasn't their mess, or when they had to introduce themselves properly. Like a lot of our teaching was, this is what Dibbles do. Kind of like that high expectations, high love. We were like, this is who we are as a family, and this is kind of
like it or not, this is who you are.
Yeah.
And so you will do these X, Y, and Z and that has nothing to do with the church. That has nothing to do with what you're being taught at school. It's done because this is
who we are,
and this is who you are, like it or not.
Well, Nick Saban, arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time, he says we play to a standard. We don't play to the scoreboard. We don't care about the score. We just play to our standard. And if we hit the standard, I'm happy. If we don't, even if we're winning by 100 points, I'm not happy if we're not playing to our standard. What are some of the most tragic or the moments that gave you the most heartache as parents?
I feel like we were pretty fortunate. We didn't experience a lot of heartache until they kind of became adults. We were fortunate that we didn't have children in their teenage years. They didn't really break our hearts, as you'd say. It was a few years, maybe 5 years after that experience that I shared with you, that we had an adult child, we've had children that have had same-sex relationships.
Attraction.
Yeah. We've had children that have had crises of faith, questioning the gospel, questioning God.
Even the existence of God. So not small things, certainly.
Well, those at the time, I will say, were heart-wrenching. And to be honest, we weren't prepared for them. I think that we kind of lived in an ignorant bliss, kind of, for a period of time. Like everything just seemed like it was butterflies and rainbows, that's what you would say, maybe. And then things just started to happen. Life started to happen. And we weren't prepared for it. And we didn't handle it very well. And so that brought heartache because it broke some of those relationships that have been so important to us. But gratefully, through time and giving it to God, those relationships have come back full circle. And there's respect, and there was always love. Love never left. But there's almost a deeper love and understanding because of those heartaches. As a parent, I came to see them as God sees them and as God loves them. Because as a mom, my heart was broken, but then I was able to myself kind of be healed and move on, and know those relationships are wonderful, and I'm grateful for that because I realized that it could have stayed broken, and if that were the case, that really would have been the heartache if we had allowed those things to break what we had.
I think the things that brought us the most heartache is watching your kids in heartache. If this podcast were to go out to adult children, I think what I would want them to know is that your parents don't want to see you have heartache, right? And until they're parents of their own, they don't know this. They can't experience or even fathom what that feels like as a parent. And so in an effort to not want them to have heartache, it can prove difficult, right? These experiences can be hard, but certainly the thing that broke my heart is when my kids were brokenhearted. Maybe a friendship goes south, or they feel betrayed by a friend or a significant other or something like that in high school or younger years. Any kind of heartache was the hardest thing for me to watch, for sure, because you want your kids to be happy.
Has it been difficult basically taking your friendship and your relationship and how close you are and the gospel and kind of putting them in two separate boxes? Was that kind of a difficult transition? Like, how do you manage the relationship if the viewpoint on the gospel has changed over the years?
It's a great question. I think Angie pointed out that love never left. You can love someone who doesn't believe in God.
Yeah.
Something that I learned on my mission is we serve the people we love, and then in return, we love the people we serve. If family isn't the absolute measure of service, then I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. Because
you have that opportunity. I mean, you're keeping this person alive and trying to keep them from destroying themselves, if that's ever the case. And so that action of keeping them in that space, I think is vital and just such a great blessing.
Well, and I feel like the other thing that I'm so grateful for is I kind of mentioned respect. So with these children, even though we don't agree with same religious principles or whatever, they respect us and where we're at. And they know that the gospel is important to us. They allow us to give what we can give, right? What we're willing to give. And I'm so grateful for that, because they will do things that probably may not be comfortable for them, but they do it because it matters to us, I guess.
Yeah, it's when you mention it in boxes like that, it's hard because I wouldn't, I'm getting introspective here, but I wouldn't want them to feel like we would have to I don't want to be someone different around them. I think that's what Angie's getting at as well,
Yeah.
is that really it's one box. And that box, within that box resides all of the principles that they learned as kids. And you can move around in that box, but you can't get out of it. You were raised there, and those principles are there. And that's where we reside, is in that box. And there's room to give, and there's room to grant exception and space and understanding and all of those things, and not change who you are as parents.
I feel like it's like, of all the signs you can see of a happy family, it's when the kids are grown, is the family close? Are they still friends? Do they love each other? And I feel like that is only the result of decades of intentional hard work and love. And it appears like you guys have been pretty successful at that.
We're blessed, certainly. Yeah. And sometimes in spite of ourselves. Today, certainly, I know that the hand of God has been there for us. I've seen it, and could never deny that He's blessed us, and He's blessed our children, experiences that they've had and that we've had that have brought us together and repaired and improved. And that's what this life is. That's what this experience of family is, this chemistry project that we're all a part of, is we have these opportunities. And I think it's been amazing to watch, but I just don't want to give ourselves as much credit as you're giving us, Chris. A lot of it is just a great blessing. We feel that we've been greatly blessed by our Heavenly Father, and we're forever grateful for that.
All right, last question. I want to be respectful of your time, but we ask everyone the same question. What percentage would you assign to nature versus nurture? You've got 100% to work with. How much is nature? How much is nurture, in your opinion and experience? And you can each have your own individual answers.
I'd probably say it's almost 50-50, because your kids come the way that they come, and you can nurture them all the same way, and they're all going to come out differently.
Yeah, certainly. If you were an only child, if we only had one child, it'd be hard to say, right? Because there's no perspective of having different children. But the veracity and the validity of the fact that they come different is 100%, right? Because
Yeah.
certainly over these last 30 plus years of marriage, we haven't altered in any great degree. Certainly during that period of time that we were raising our kids, in each of their 18 years respectively, it's not like we changed. We weren't all over the place. We were almost too consistent. And so to say that we raised them all the same, I think is a very safe statement. And the fact that even with that knowledge, every experience was different, at least 50%. They just come the way they are, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what we believe. Yeah, Angie just whispered it's by design. And it is by design, and it's designed by someone who knows so much better than we do. That we honestly believe that before we came to this earth, we existed as spirits in a spirit world, a spirit life with a heavenly Father who would never want all of his children to be identical. And so we believe that each of them come from that space, from that experience as different people. And what a blessing that it is that way, because they come already different from each other. That benefits not only them and their siblings and that chemistry that we've talked about, this chemistry project of life. I'm grateful that they all come differently.
And hopefully we don't mess it up as parents, right?
Right. Yeah. They're on loan to us by God. And so that's, I guess, the goal is that at a minimum, the 50% that we can match the 50% that God gave us is a pretty good goal.
Yeah.
That if he sent them down with 50%, having that much trust to allow us to contribute the other 50%. And I think being the perfect parent that God is, I think that makes sense. I mean, maybe the perfect parent would be a 90-10, but I think God loves us enough to send them down with 50% of the way there and trust us enough to love them the other 50%.
I love that. I like to say that God allows bad things to happen, but he orchestrates situations as such to where good will always come out of it. He doesn't make the bad happen. Bad just happens, and he can pull some strings to where good will come out of that, right? And I just kind of connected the dots to this nature nurture question last week. I was thinking about it, and I just wondered, wondered out loud, maybe God sends the kids that need a little more nurturing to the families that are able to provide that. And the kids that are they have all the nature that they'll ever need, he sends to the families that might be struggling a little more, just to increase the odds a little bit. We still have our agency, but I feel like he's just pulling so many strings without interfering with our agency. Just like he just wants us all to give the best shot possible. He does everything possible to make that happen. And after a certain point, it's out of his hands. That's just how it is.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Kenny, Angie. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. This was very impactful for me personally, and I'm sure it will be for many others as well.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us on, Chris. It's been a blessing and really insightful for us too, just knowing that this was coming to kind of be introspective, look into our experience, and just to be so grateful for the blessings that we've been given.
And parenting doesn't end. It continues.
Yep.
For both good and bad.
Yep.
But mostly for good. If parenting ended when your kids left the home, I think that would be a tragedy greater than any other.
Yeah.
It's a great blessing.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.